The Chicago Bulls' new style play has been exciting and, for the most part, has been successful. And we're going to talk about what exactly has gone into the Bulls establishing a new style of play. We're also going to talk about the injury updates to Jalen Smith and Lonzo Ball, as well as previews to night game against the Orlando Magic. We're going to get into all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. I want to start off talking about the Chicago Bulls' new offensive system that we've gotten to see for 4 games so far. 9 if you include the preseason, which, take that for what you will. And so far through this, the Chicago Bulls are leading the league in pace, which is a big difference from how the Chicago Bulls have been the last. Just that alone has been such a big and huge difference in regards to how the Chicago Bulls play. Let's all talk about the Bulls ranking third in three-point shots per game, averaging 46.8 three-pointers per game. That's a huge a change for the Chicago Bulls when you look at versus last season, just how they're hosting up three-pointers. And this is really what Billy Donovan and Arturas Karnisovas said at Media Day. Problem is they had said it 2 years in a row, right, that they wanted to play quicker and that they wanted to get up more three-pointers. And last year we just didn't really see it, right? Now this season, it's been evident so far. And the thing that makes a difference is that the players are bought in to the system completely. And you can tell in the way that even, players like Josh Giddey are getting up three-point shots consistently, right? Nikola Vucevic and the three-point shots that he's getting up. Clearly, Zach Levine, Kobe, we know those guys are going to get up three-point shots. But outside of just the three-point shots, that pace thing is a huge thing for the Chicago Bulls as well. Because even a player like Nikola Vucevic, who I did not feel like would really fit in with the Chicago Bulls and what they're trying to do pace-wise, he really has not been a glaring hole out there other than on the defensive side of the ball, which we already knew. Now, outside of just getting up more three-point shots, which the Bulls do rank third in the NBA in, the Bulls are also in the top 10 at three-point shooting percentage, hitting 38% of their three-pointers. Now, you do have players like Nikola Vucevic, over 50% from three. You have Josh Giddey, over 45% from three right now. And, will those things maintain over the season? Highly unlikely, right? So that's going to come down a little bit for the Chicago Bulls. But as of right now, to just the Bulls be hitting the three-point percentage that they are, it's why they've been in games. Like that comeback against the Memphis Grizzlies was in large part because of the Bulls' willingness and ability to take and make three-point shots, which has definitely added a lot to the Chicago Bulls team. You cannot deny it, right? But then also, there's an unrated, like a lot of are going to make about pace. A lot of things are going to make it about the three-point shooting. But one thing that the Chicago Bulls are doing right now as well is sharing the ball. 28.8 assists per game, which for the Chicago Bulls, which we talked about last year and this year. That 27 assist mark is something where special things have happened for the Chicago Bulls team. But they also hold a 69.7 assist percentage. Both of those numbers, the assist per game and the assist percentage, are in the top 3 of the NBA. The Bulls are sharing the rock between each other. And that's where, not crack rock, we're not TBO here, but they are sharing the ball between each other. And that is where things are getting very special. That's where you're able to see the games where we have multiple 10-point per game, over double-digit scores and things like that. The Bulls are also averaging 322 passes per game, which is the 4th highest in the NBA. Let me be clear here. That's only behind the Raptors, the Warriors, and the Pacers as far as sharing the rock. And so the Bulls are it's an actual new system, and it's built on getting everybody opportunities. Right now, coming into the season, I wanted to see where the Bulls, even in preseason, the Bulls are really kind of sharing the shot distribution to where almost every starter was getting like 10, 12 shots, things like that. Of course, now that the season has started, that's changed a little bit, right? As far as the balance, as far as field goals attempted per game, but there's still really good balance there. Levine, 17 shots per game, 16.8. Nikola Vucevic, 15. Kobe White, 15. Josh Giddey, 11 shots per game. Patrick Williams, 9. Ayo Dosunmu, 8. Jalen Smith, 6, which what Jalen Smith is doing on 6 shots per game is damn special, right? So You're getting players that are bought into this. And even the bench, there's a balance between the bench as well, right? Like those 6 players that I just named are your starters and your first 2 key reserves, but then you get into your other bench players. Lonzo's averaging 4 shots per game. Julian Phillips is averaging 4 shots per game. Miles Vucevic is averaging 2.5 shots per game, right? Now, while we want to see some of those be a little bit higher, offensively, everything the Bulls are doing right now is sound, right? Meaning that you can see the thought process and the intention behind everything that they're trying to do offensively. But one thing that has made this a very special thing isn't just the fact that the Bulls are passing the ball more or the Bulls are getting more assists. It's how the Bulls are getting it, right? Having a plan, this is where some of the people, Josh Giddey haters, are going to get a little triggered. But having players like Lonzo Ball and Josh Giddey that are willing passers, right? That are orchestrators of an offense that can thread that needle offensively. Having those 2 players, as well as when Kobe is operating in games where Lonzo Ball is not playing, which we'll talk about. We're going to have more of that here soon, right? And when Josh Giddey has to sit, you're seeing Kobe White even a better point. Like his assist percentage right now, the numbers aren't up because he has point guards like Josh Giddey and Lonzo Ball out there at all times, but his assist percentage is way higher than what it was last year. Everybody is moving the ball. Everybody's moving. Now, we need to be more consistent at moving without the ball, right? But right now, the Bulls' offense is what is making this team special. It's what's making this team have a chance in most of these games. It's what's giving this team a fighting opportunity, right? And so while it hasn't all been perfect, there's been some things that have definitely hurt this team as well. Turnover. The Bulls got to get the turnovers together. Now, having 2 games where you've had over 20 turnovers is, of course, going to hurt your overall percentage, and the Bulls have to get that in gear, right? We got to get that in gear. But while there's been some definitely things that have hurt this team, listen, the Bulls are in the bottom 10 of the league as turnovers per game. We're averaging 16.3 turnovers per game, but we're not the bottom 5, right? So we're closer to that middle of the pack, and you have those 2 glaring games where we've had 2 really bad turnover games. That's really bringing that down. But then when you look at the Bulls right now, Zach Levine is leading the Chicago Bulls in usage, which I'm not mad at. 25.5% usage rate right now. Zach has been extremely, efficient for the most part. Kobe White's had 2 games where he just hasn't had it. I do think that usage rate is going to even out a little bit more between those 2 guys, where I think they're both going to be around 22, 23% when it comes down to it. But it's that Zach Levine's assist to turnover ratio is a little bit concerning as well. He has 11 assists on the season, 16 turnovers through 4 games. And those 16 turnovers are the 6th worst in the NBA right now. And he's 77th in assists. He ranks 263rd in assist to turnover ratio and 326 in turnover percentage. We got to get that together, right? And the Bulls right now are also middle of the pack overall. Our assist to turnover ratio is 13th. Our turnover percentage is 15th in the NBA. Like I said before, we can get better in that, right? With the way that we are high up in that assist percentage, we can be better as a team in that. It's just going to take a concerted effort to limit the turnovers, but that's going to come with comfortability in this system, right? And so everybody right now is playing into their roles. While, and Josh Giddey may get more minutes now with Lonzo Ball out. We'll see how that balances. But, you have players like Vooch who's bought in. You have players like Levine who is bought in, right? Despite people trying to point out and still trying to make it seem like Zach's playing selfish out there, he's not. I don't know what you guys are paying attention to, but it can't be the actual play because Zach isn't playing selfish out there. They are relying on Zach, and that comes down to you've had 2 games where Kobe White's giving you next to nothing, right, as far as efficiency. So you have to rely more on the player that is being efficient there, and he's had some bad second halves as well. But I haven't seen a Zach Levine that, to me, has been selfish out there, right? We have seen a Zach Levine that, we want more balance from, but then again, you got to have other players to step up. But he's trying to trust his players more. We just need players to make shots. But, and this is still we still haven't really seen Ayo and the offensive growth he flashed last year. He hasn't shot the 3 ball well at all, right? So that's another dynamic of this team. Lonzo's going to get better every single day and every single month, after dealing with his injury. So that's still something. Julian Phillips is really finding his way, but he's barely scratched the surface. So we do have things of this team that can get better. We have some things that can get worse as well. Like I said, Vooch and Josh Giddey right now are shooting the 3 ball at a rate that I just don't see them maintaining. If they do maintain it, it will be wild to see for the Chicago Bulls this season. I'm not going to be mad at it if they maintain it, but it's just some concerns there. But overall, the Bulls, how quickly they've bought into a new system, right, is something that needs to be studied because Billy Donovan and this coaching staff have done a really good job. Now, when we face adversity, the times that we've seen them kind of revert back to what they've done before, we got to get that underway, but at least they're all bought into the system now, right? We got to get them continually moving off the ball. We got to get them continually moving without the ball, slashing, cutting. That's going to help players like Lonzo. That's going to help players like Josh Giddey. That's going to help players like Ayo Dosunmu in transition get these guys the rock. So that's something that we got to look as well and monitor. But overall, through the first 4 games of the season, the Bulls' new system isn't just talk for once. It's not just talk. It's something that is tangible, and the analytics, the statistics, everything is backing up that this Bulls team is finally playing a modern style of basketball, and we have a roster that it fits. And we've already seen the rotation kind of constrict at times, right? Because we haven't seen THT lately, right? It was a player that we saw early into the season. And so, Billy Donovan's already kind of settling in on his rotation. We just got to see how things are going to continue to grow. I talked about the defense yesterday with Wes Unseld and what he's done defensively for this team. We also got to acknowledge how much this offense has changed for the Bulls and how much this is turning into a legitimate weapon for this franchise. And let's see how it's going to go going forward. Now, we got 2 injury updates initially yesterday. That's Jalen Smith and Lonzo Ball, both initially listed as questionable for the Orlando Magic game. And then about a couple of hours after that, we got an update on Lonzo Ball that he will be out for 10 days until he's reevaluated. Now, reevaluated could mean that, hey, at the 10-day mark, we're going to do a quick evaluation. You're back out there. Reevaluated means, hey, we're going to see where you are in 10 days. And it could still be where you're not ready yet, right? Now, this seems like more of a precautionary thing. I've already seen my conspiracy theorist Bulls fans say, oh, well, they just really want to give him more rest so they can extend his minutes. I don't know why you would have to sit somebody out 10 days to extend their minutes restriction. That's not really a thing that you have to do. I've already seen some people say, well, oh my God, this probably really is something with their knee, but they don't want to worry fans. You can't. With the way the NBA is now having a requirement of transparency, if the Bulls will report that it's a wrist sprain when it's really a knee injury, they will get fined, right? And we know Jerry Reinsdorf is all about his coin. He's not going to do that, right? So those things kind of play a part into it, right? But Lonzo Ball out 10 days, which means he's going to miss about 6 or 7 games, depending on how that falls, right? And that just is what it is, man. It's unfortunate, but one thing that we always knew that Lonzo was going to have that we assumed that Lonzo was going to have some type of setback at some point. Now, I'm glad that it's not the knee. That's the most important thing to me. It's not the knee, right? The wrist injury, we can deal with that. Like, those little things are going to happen. He's back to playing competitive basketball. The Bulls did come out and say that it happened in the first quarter in the Memphis Grizzlies game where his wrist got slapped. And so he still played after that, right? So that's if that's what happened, it's a pretty promising prognosis. It just seems like the Bulls medical staff is again playing it cautious. So you're looking now at Lonzo Ball returning either that Saturday, November 9th game in Atlanta, or what the Bulls have kind of done with Lonzo and want him on the home court, or the home game on November 11th against Cleveland. So those are kind of the 2 areas that you're looking for Lonzo Ball to come back. Hopefully he has a speedy recovery. Lonzo has been providing something for this team. So to miss this is kind of big, right? So, we really don't have somebody that could replicate what Lonzo does. Now, Josh Giddey can, but he's in the starting lineup. So it's either going to come through more Josh Giddey minutes, or this team is just going to have to change. And what we saw in the game before when Lonzo sat down is that we saw Kobe White kind of start staggering his minutes with that bench unit instead of it being Josh Giddey. And he was able to go back to doing some point guard things. So the Bulls have the depth to withstand Lonzo being out for 5 or 6 games, right? Now, the Jalen Smith injury, not to say that it's more concerning than losing Lonzo, but it is in a sense. We have nobody to replace what Jalen Smith brings. Now, I, for one, hope that means an opportunity for Adama Sanogo to come into the roster and play some backup center minutes. But I think what we could see very well is small ball for Billy Donovan, something that we know he's comfortable at and that he likes to utilize. So we're probably going to see a lot of Patrick Williams at center. Take that for what you will. We may even see some Julian Phillips at center. I still hold out hope that Adama Sanogo is going to get a chance. Billy said at the beginning of the season, Adama's ready for NBA minutes. Give the man NBA minutes, right? Let's see what he can bring. Yes, you have to change your style a little bit with Adama Sanogo because he's not as mobile as Jalen Smith. And what Jalen Smith has brought to this Bulls team on a permanent basis has been absolutely ridiculous, and you cannot take away from it. Now, he's questionable. So there's still a big chance that Jalen Smith ends up playing tonight. But if he doesn't, how are you going to replace the quality minutes that Jalen Smith at averaging 14 minutes? He's averaging 11.5 points per game on 53% shooting, 57% shooting from three-point range, taking 3.5 of those per game, 6 rebounds as well in that time, a half a steal. He hasn't registered a block yet this season. It is what it is, right? But that per minute basis, 14 minutes to get 11.5 points per game is ridiculous per minute production. And so regardless of who you bring, you're probably not going to get that same level of production, but you can get it in a different way. So this is something I'm really going to be monitoring for the Chicago Bulls because Jalen Smith in a short amount of time has proven himself to be, with his athleticism, his ability to get out and run on both sides of the ball, his lob catching ability from these point guards has been really big for this Bulls team. And so how the Bulls replace that, going to be something to watch and monitor. And we're going to get to see it maybe tonight if he does not play against the Orlando Magic, which brings us to our last topic today. Previewing this game against the Orlando Magic, this is going to be, and this is why I started off this episode talking about the Bulls offense, because this is going to be one of the biggest tests for this Bulls team in the offense, and specifically when they face adversity, do they stick to the system? Do they stay trusting each other? Because the Orlando Magic are coming. The Orlando Magic are there. They are coming, and they are trying to, listen, this is a team. Yes, and this isn't just because of Paolo Banchero's 50-point game. Not really worried about that aspect of it. He's probably not going to maintain that. It is what it is. But the Orlando Magic are such a sound defensive team, right? And what they do defensively is so important to everything else that they do, how it feeds into their offense, how it feeds into their confidence. The Orlando Magic are an amazing defensive team from top to bottom, and what they are going to try to do with throwing defenders at Zach Levine, at Kobe White, even keeping Josh Giddey from getting to the paint and being effective, that's where this team is going to try to thrive at. And so the Bulls got to watch it. The Bulls got to be prepared for themselves. The Orlando Magic are forcing 16.5 turnovers per game, 14.5. I gave them a little bit too much credit. Turnovers per game. For a Bulls team that's already averaging 16 turnovers per game, that's got to be something that you have to watch. They are going to try to use their length to get into those passing lanes. And also with the Orlando Magic, yes, you have Paolo Banchero, who looks like he's making that next step for this team that they drastically need. But outside of that, you also have Jalen Suggs, who's averaging 17 points per game after averaging 12 the year prior, and he's still bringing that same defensive intensity and three-point shooting, right? So the Bulls are going to have to watch out. Now, KCP, their big acquisition this year, has not really done much of anything as far as scoring-wise yet, shooting-wise yet, but we knew that KCP has had big games against the Chicago Bulls before. The Bulls still got to look out for him because you don't want to allow him to be the one to get a big game off against you. Franz Wagner, another player as well that the Bulls are going to have to prepare for. Another player that was taken with the Bulls pick, but has been very productive for this Orlando Magic team. The Bulls are going to have to really be bought in to what they're going to have to do offensively and defensively. And this is a game that you really need to watch out for how Wes Unseld coaches this team on the defensive side of the ball, because the barrage that's coming from this Orlando Magic team is not something that you need to take lightly, right? And so while the Magic are still not necessarily, like, the offense is definitely better than what it was last year. Defense is a huge reason why the Orlando Magic were winning the games that they were winning last year, but now they've added a little bit of a scoring punch with Paolo and Suggs taking big steps up. And so the Magic aren't really, they're in the middle of the pack as far as three-point shooting, right? But we know that that's still kind of the Bulls' Achilles heel. They're shooting 37% from three so far this season, are the Orlando Magic, and they're taking, in the top 5, they're taking over 40 per game. So this is another game where both teams are going to try to live and die by the three-point shot. But they do have a player in Paolo Banchero, which this could very well turn into Paolo and Suggs versus Zach Levine and Kobe White, as far as these guys both have, their duos both having to be very effective shooting the ball wise. Now, they also have Franz Wagner, who's averaging 20 points per game for them, and we've had Vooch, who's playing pretty well. So it's a lot of things that kind of match and are similar with these two squads. The Bulls have to be sound and prepared against this Orlando Magic team, because if you're not prepared, this is going to be an ugly game for the Chicago Bulls. And the Orlando Magic are 3-1 on the season so far. And their schedule has been pretty solid as well. Wins over Miami, wins over Memphis when they lost to Memphis, and a win over the Pacers, win over Brooklyn. We're really taking that seriously. So this is going to be an interesting case scenario for the Bulls. And facing the Orlando Magic is always interesting for the Bulls because they have always matched up really well against the Bulls over the last few years, even when they weren't a great team, right? But this is an Orlando Magic team that, while I still don't view as like a contender in the Eastern Conference to come out of the East, this is a team that I do think can go into the second round or whatever else, depending on how the bracket falls. So the Bulls are going to have to be prepared for a barrage today. And they are going to be trying to overwhelm the Bulls on the offense and defensive side. And the key thing to me that I really want to see in this game is how the Bulls attack this defense over the Orlando Magic. This is, other than the Pelicans, the Bulls haven't faced off against really great defensive teams this season. So to see this test and see how this offense comes up against that brand of defense that the Magic are known for, that's going to be a big game. And so watching the bench as well in this, we found something special with the bench unit last game in Io, Jalen, P. Will being out there with those guys, Jalen, who's not going to be playing anymore, right? So, we got to see now how that bench, and this could be one of those games where we need a big Ayo Dosunmu bench performance. We may need Manas Vucevic to do more than what he's done before. We'll see how that rotation shakes out. You're missing both, potentially. You're missing Lonzo, but you could miss Jalen Smith in this game. That's going to open up a lot of minutes. That's going to give more time for Julian and Dalen and Modest potentially, maybe even Adama, to really show something. And we need every bit of that in this game against the Magic. Let me know what you guys think on that down below. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.